Joe Healy, NBL reporter. How's New York treating you?
I love New York, like literally my favorite city in the world. And hadn't been here. Oh, that's a lie. I was here in February. I feel like I hadn't been here for a while, but I think every time I leave, I'm like, oh, I just wish I want to go back again. So it's been cool.
Greatest city in the world, right? Especially during the summer.
I think so. So. I'm melting a little bit right now, but excited for tomorrow and having a few mates around, which will be cool. I kind of said to them, I'm going to do barbecue style food, all that kind of thing. But if there's anything that's sort of mandatory to have on the 4th of July that I will not have thought of because I haven't done it here before like this, please bring it. Let me know. I'm a novice at this.
Okay. All right. Let's start with Alex Saar, number 2 pick of the NBA draft. We could get to potential in a second, but my question to you is, how good is Alex Saar right now? What did you learn about him as a player and a person over the course of the NBL season?
As a person, first of all, he's a good kid. He's a hard worker. He comes from a really amazing family, and that was quite obvious to see as the season went on, which is really nice to see. I think in my position, being able to get up close and personal and interview these guys a lot, you get an idea of what they're like. And I occasionally have scouts calling me, sort of, look, hey, we can see it. We can see him on the floor, sure. But what is he like behind the scenes? What is he like in the locker room, in the tunnel, behind the court, that sort of thing? And he's definitely showed that he was one of the good eggs, for sure. His head's screwed on properly. He's mature. And I think that I think he actually talked about it before the draft, but it comes the level of maturity that comes with the fact that he's had to be really adaptable throughout his career so far. So yeah, definitely learned that he is a good person and that the Wizards have a great character in him. On the court, I mean, you can't ignore his size, right? He's super athletic. He's defensively orientated, which is amazing and works really well, especially in the NBL back home, but it'll be great here in the NBA for him. Loves being around the rim. He's athletic. I think he can put on some size in the NBA. He obviously needs to do that. And the other thing that the Wizards will be really working with him on, I think, is the 3-ball.
Yeah. Do you think he can help right away with the Wizards? They need help, Joe. They need help.
They do need help. Absolutely, I think he can. And especially now that they've got Valanciunas, I think that almost takes a little bit of the pressure off of Saar. He can comfortably fit into that 4 role. He doesn't have to be physically as big straight away because he's got this absolutely, ginormous human alongside him who can kind of play the bully ball role. That was one thing I think with Alex you did notice in Australia. He can run the floor, he can spread the floor for them, but when he's kind of pinned down on the block, like old school, playing against people like Aaron Baines, who's going to look at Alex and go, all right, buddy, let's see what you've got, and push him out the way and show him who's boss, kind of thing. So I think Alex now has been afforded a little bit more time to kind of bulk up and ease his way into the league, but I think he can have an impact straight away.
What do you think the biggest improvement areas are for Alex?
The 3-ball, definitely, because he's not afraid to shoot it.
Right.
His mid-range is quite nice. He's not bad off the ball from that regard. So if you can kind of, take those few steps back and start knocking those down comfortably, it opens up the floor a lot more for him and the team. His free throws as well have been improving. And I think that's the other thing about Alex. Where he's at right now is one thing, but he's shown over the past few years that everything is getting a little bit better and he's able to put his mind to that. And that's a massive positive sign, I think, for NBA teams.
Yeah, I wanted to take a step back and talk about the NBL in general, because from the outside looking in, I feel like they do such a great job of presentation, of marketing, and they were always ready for high profile stars like, let's say, LaMelo to come in. Did you notice that as well? Like, they take presentation and marketing, they approach it differently than maybe some of the European leagues?
I think so. I think it's been a conscious effort over the last 4, 5, 6 years to really position the NBL as one of the top leagues in the world, and especially with this Next Stars program, it's all about it being a stepping stone, and so there has to be a level of obviously professionalism, but it has to appeal to a wider range of people. Sort of, there are that many just for example, NBA fans in Australia, but not the transition, being able to grab those fans and have them come and watch the NBL on a regular basis is actually a bit of a challenge. And so the NBL from that point of view have had to think a little bit broader and go, okay, how do we sort of bring these fans in? Because the product is amazing. The product is great. And you especially see it when you're there and you're in the arena. If I bring friends along who haven't been before, they go, holy shit, like this is tough, this is physical. Which often doesn't always translate on the TV if you're watching from home. So I think the league has done a really great job, and they've got aspirations. They're expanding. We've got a couple more teams potentially coming in as well very soon. They've just taken on the women's league as well. So I think basketball as a whole, they can see that there's a big space in Australia, especially for the growth.
Tell me more about the Next Stars program. How does it work? So from my understanding, you get one roster spot and it's unlimited salary cap. Is that how it works?
Basically, yeah. So it's supported by the league. And therefore, as you say, it doesn't come in under the team's salary cap. Not every team has kind of been totally open to it yet. Now I'm thinking about it. Tassie have just got one, so maybe it's just about hit every team so far. Southeast Melbourne maybe still to come, but people, I think, or teams were tentative to start with. It was a case of like, oh, do we have to take this player? We don't know a lot about them. We're not here to be a stepping stone for this player. We are here to win.
To win, yeah.
Right. And in some cases, in Alex's case, they essentially made it to the conference finals. Last year, they did an amazing job. He had a great role off the bench for them. In other cases, like an AJ Johnson, I think he suffered from that regard because Justin Tatum wasn't going to allow the Hawks to just be a springboard for AJ. It was like, no, we're here to win. I'm not sure that you're the guy right now. And so there are pros and cons to it, but I mean, if you look at where AJ is at the moment and having been through that and trained with that group, I think it's a really positive thing.
Yeah, that is interesting because when I look at Europe compared to the NBA, and Australia is something totally different, right? I always look at the NBA, there's an entertainment aspect to it, right? We could even look back when Brandon Jennings was in Europe. Like they didn't even give him playing time for as talented as he was. So would you say Australia falls somewhere in between those two?
Yeah, it's definitely not an entertainment based league. These guys are out there playing their hearts out. I mean, essentially they're playing and fighting to feed their families.
Right.
So it's a tough league, and it's very defensively orientated. From an offensive point of view, it's got to be very structured. And so when somebody comes in and their agenda is to be a human highlight reel, it's not going to sit right.
Okay.
The coaches aren't going to play nice with you. It's like, no, you're here to win. If we can help you at the same time and we can work together to eventually make everybody better, then great. But if you're coming in with a selfish mindset, and not saying that AJ did that at all, but just as an example, it's just not gonna flow.
Was there friction when LaMelo got there a few years back? Because obviously he's a great basketball player, but there's a flash aspect to it as well.
For sure. And he was probably the first example of that happening and people going, okay, hang on a second, how are we going to take this? I think for the most part, yes, there would have been a few players that sort of got their backups and going, okay, hang on a second, like he's only here because of his name, da-da-da. But for the greater good, for the benefit of the league and for how many more eyes that put on the league, I think for the most part it was probably a positive thing. But you can totally see the argument for these guys, and that just made for a tougher competition within the team as well. Like nobody's bowing down to LaMelo Ball in this league. They're going to front up and be like, okay, let's go. And so the practice court, I think, probably showed that.
And his time was successful there, right?
His time was, yeah. I don't think they had a lot of wins from memory. I don't have the stats in front of me. But he sort of proved himself. He did really well. And so then they sat him for a large part of the second part of that season, which again, it's sort of the Next Stars program has now evolved that these guys aren't going to get that opportunity to start with if they are going to be sat. Look at Alex Saar. He was the projected #1 pick, and everyone was like, "Oh, is he going to spend the rest of the season on the Pine. And it's like, no, he's part of this team now, and he's wanted to play too. So the system and the program is definitely evolving from that point of view.
So it's interesting. Bob Myers comes out and says teams are being told not to draft Bronny or he'll go to Australia. How real was the Bronny to NBL buzz?
I mean, I rolled my eyes when I saw that. I'm not going to lie. It's just like, this is just a headline for clicks. Bronny, I mean, behind closed doors prior to the draft and him going to the Lakers and things, it definitely would have been a consideration for sure. If I'm Bronny and his team, to be honest, I think it would have been too much of a risk. I think he would have come out to Australia and done well and by all means competed, but I don't think he would have been that standout guy that then you can justify somebody in the NBA taking him from there. Like the Australian League is too good for that. And so I think that from Bronny's sake, the best scenario has obviously happened. And to be honest, I felt really bad for him. Well, not bad for him. It was uncomfortable watching his first press conference the other day with the Lakers and the amount of questions that he's getting about his dad. And you could tell he was just fed up with it. And I mean, I get the whole nepotism argument and whatnot, but I mean, you put yourself in his shoes. He's done all the right things. It's not as if you are turning down a contract with the Lakers. It's just now on him to go and prove himself.
Out of all the young players that have played in the NBA, NBL, who has had the most impact? Because we always talk about potential, but who is actually the best basketball player in the NBL when we're talking about Next Stars or any of the young talent that came from the States to the NBL?
Good question. Josh Giddey is probably the first one that comes to mind. He had an amazing impact down in the NBL and really sort of put his I mean, his name was already out there for sure, but he elevated himself with his style of play and took to the men's game incredibly well. A couple of the other guys, Ousmane Dieng.
Okay.
So started off well, picked up a couple of injuries and then ended really well. And you could 100% see his upside straight away. Ram Repair as well. These French guys coming out to Australia are making inroads, that's for sure. But yeah, there have been a number of guys that have done really well. And the prospects for next season are already really exciting. I was looking at the mock draft for next season already, and there's a guy called Rocco Zikarsky who's 17. He's 7'2", and he was projected at number 20 so far. And you just look at it and it shook my head to myself. And I'm like, he's 100% going top 10, if not top 5. Playing his Aaron Baines understudy at the moment. He's going to have 2 seasons under his belt come the draft next year. So there's a lot of guys that are having a good impact.
We talked about Bronny a little bit, and we could shift next to his combine teammate, AJ Johnson, who he was fun at the combine. I mean, he's just a fun player, athletic, shifty, could get his shot off. How do you feel about his NBA outlook?
I am excited to see how he applies himself and how he fits in, because he's been a bit of an enigma. Like I sort of mentioned before, he didn't play a lot in the NBL. He came out with sort of a big reputation, but again, it's that highlight reel. Didn't seem or come across as so much of a team player on the court. I think as the season progressed, you really saw the positive side of that team player in him come out. He was on the bench. He was always getting behind his teammates. He was up and about whenever anyone was looking to shoot the ball and that kind of thing. And so I think that there was probably a lot of growth there for him from that point of view. Even though he wasn't on the court a whole lot, he definitely will have matured from that experience. And I mean, he was such a big name coming out of high school, and as you said, had a great sort of time at the combine that I was really pleased to see him go as high as he did. And I will be excited to watch how he goes. But it's up to him right now. He's what, 20 years of age. He's long and lanky, and he can get a bit stronger and stuff, but I think he'll be good.
Yeah, you have an interesting perspective covering the NBL. Do you like the idea of young players from the States going to college, maybe taking the OTE route, Australia? Like, how do you feel about all of that? And where would you, if you were mentoring a young kid, try to make that decision? What would you tell them?
Oof, that's actually a really hard one. The Next Stars program has been amazing, and I'm a massive advocate for it. I think a lot of it comes with probably who the people are that you have around you, what their connections are with the NBA, what your financial situation is. Obviously, with the NIL deals now, college athletes are able to sort of benefit from that. Whereas there was a point there where I guess the G League Ignite and the Next Stars program were able to pay players to come out. But I think if you are genuinely just focused on your development and you're, relatively comfortable, otherwise you've got good people around you, the NBL has been fantastic for the guys' development because they're coming up against grown men. They're not playing against their peers. And so I really think it has the opportunity to elevate these younger guys further than what they potentially would playing in the college system.
Reporting in the NBA, in the NBL, how did that start for you? And how do you feel about the evolution of your career? Because it's been great to see your growth.
Yeah, I was a basketball player. I was a fan growing up, and always sort of loved the game. So once I started working in it, I guess it's more of a visceral thing. You understand it. I mean, I didn't play at a particularly high level, don't get me wrong, but I have a lot of love for the game. And I guess the progression has sort of gone part and parcel with how the league has gone too. There are just more opportunities in Australia. The media landscape is not quite as saturated either. So you have a lot more access to the players, to the coaches, to the CEOs. I'm heading over to Summer League next week and can't wait to sit down with them and chat and sort of pick their brains about what they're doing. Not necessarily, I mean, a lot of it is part of the reporting, but some of it's just genuinely out of interest. Sitting in a room, two Summer Leagues ago with Southeast Melbourne, sort of listening to the coach, the CEO, and one of their international scouts about how they were going about the puzzle pieces and choosing a player, like that kind of thing, you just sponge off. I love it. And so, yeah, it's honestly, it's a labor of love, my job. But yeah, that's me.
Yeah, that's cool because obviously the NBL has been around for a while, but it's good to grow with something that is growing, right? Like they recently had the Next Stars program and things are really starting to boom. So it's a nice place to be for the boom of your own career, if you will.
Yeah, totally. And like I kind of alluded to before, it's only going to get better and bigger.
Yeah, right.
And the WNBL in Australia has really kind of fallen behind in terms of the growth of the NBL has been exponential by comparison, but it's just been picked up by the NBL ownership as well. So that kicks in April next year. So even just having that in mind as well, and being able to get behind the women a lot more, and not that you don't support them already, but being able to really like throw some money behind that, increase the broadcast, increase people's awareness for them, and ultimately hopefully increase their salaries, which is the ultimate goal for them. So yeah, it's a really exciting time to be part of Australian basketball. The guys and girls are back in Australia at the moment, getting ready for the Olympics as well. So that's the next big thing coming up.
All right, last thing. One piece of advice you'd give your 18-year-old self knowing what you know now.
Not to give a rat's about what anyone thinks of you. That is one thing in this industry. There's criticism coming at you from all directions, as well as props. But I know myself, I really take that stuff on board, or you're used to, and it's something that has taken me a long time to be able to deal with. So if I could tell my 18-year-old self something, it's like, do you know what? Just let it go.
Yeah. And as you have said, you'll see more and more criticism. It's inevitable.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Most of it's constructive, or you can take it on board as being constructive. But being a woman in this industry, I think you probably feel the pinch a little bit more as well. But it's just about backing yourself, having confidence, and enjoying what you do.
Most definitely. I enjoyed this conversation. Thanks so much for taking the time, Joe. Where can we find you? Social media? Everywhere else?
Social media, yeah. What's my handle? Joe Grace Healy on Instagram. I'm a terrible user of X. I need to get better at that. That's one thing. But no, on Instagram, so find me there.
Yeah, I'm more of an Instagram person than X. It's all right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Joe, great stuff. You're always welcome back on the show, and talk soon.
Amazing. Thanks for having me.
Anytime.